This is the Out of Time Film Podcast, where your hosts Tom and John discuss everything from blockbuster films to TV and games like there's no tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to the Out of Time Film Podcast. My name is Tom and as always I'm joined with my co-host John, and this week we're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Hello. Yes. Wow. Just still thinking about the movie.
Yes. What an interesting film. So full spoilers ahead for anyone who hasn't seen it. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, briefly explain the plot for those who don't know.
Okie dokie. Still reeling from the loss of Gamora, Peter Quill must rally his team to defend the universe and protect one of their own. If their mission is not completely successful, it could possibly lead to the end of the Guardians as we know them.
Aha, interesting. So, we covered Volume 1 a few weeks ago. We covered Volume 2, and here we are at Volume 3. The second film of Phase 5, which opened with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which we also covered and is bad. What did you think of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
Man, the film just takes to a different level. Like, we just been through the entire two phases since, I think it was Phase 3. Yeah,
yes, it was.
Phase 3, and we just be like, "Where's the Guardians?" And then now we're here, and we've just been through so much terrible stuff. There was some good stuff, but some terrible stuff. But this one, for me, was really exciting, and we're back with the Guardians, and it was a really interesting experience, and I absolutely loved it. It was so good. What about you?
Yeah, it was like a healing moment in a lot of ways. I have to agree with you. There's been nothing that has truly blown me away in terms of the films. I think the thing that has blown me away perhaps the most since Endgame is the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. Of course, also James Gunn, I feel like he just doesn't miss. Obviously, there are some TV shows that I like, but when it comes to on the big screen, we've had some good stuff, we've had some bad stuff, but I feel like this is a level of quality that we haven't had in a good long while. And damn, I really think that this movie, first of all, it was not what I expected at all. I definitely think that I've talked about this before in the podcast. I can't remember when, but I've definitely ranted about this before. Marketing is always the downfall of a great movie. And it's why I try these days to avoid it. But obviously, I go to cinema quite a lot, and I have seen the Guardians trailer a couple of times. And that did hinder me at points when specifically, obviously, we are talking about spoilers. So, specifically the whole time that Rocket was on the verge of death, I knew he's going to be fine because in the trailer they show shots of him that I hadn't seen yet. And that was a little bit difficult. It took me out of it a little bit. But, surrounding the entire way that the marketing presented the film and what we know from Guardians 1 and 2, this one was so very different in so many ways. And I really liked how much darker it was and how more kind of like intimate it was, which is saying a lot because the other films are very intimate.
Oh, yeah. And this film is darker in terms of like what the film is showing you with the characters, especially with Rocket. Rocket's story is really dark. That is something that I'm so glad that we explored, because Rocket was such an interesting character in the first two films, and I was just really interested by this character. I'm really glad they covered that, and the film subverts your expectations, which I thought was good, because the trailer, I was like, nah, he's not really gonna die, but I'm just gonna mentally prepare myself for that. But no, he did not die. We do get to see that arc of Rocket, a really, really good emotional arc. And James Gunn knows how to make these character arcs. They're just so good. You can see that especially in Volume 2. There's a lot going on in Volume 2, but within that, there's a lot of character arcs, which is really good. But Rocket just stole the whole film. He was just a highlight, and the story was just very rich within that, and I really, really like that.
Yeah, some of the highlights, I think definitely some of the bits that stood out the most to me were the segments with Rocket telling his origin story. That stuff was so, like, first of all, tonally, it was completely different from the rest of the movie. There was so much in it that was evocative of horror, and it builds you up for devastation in many ways. It's a landscape of tragedy of, you see Rocket's life, and in that life, it's, full of pain and torture. You get this spark of friendship within it. And the way that the film builds that up before tearing it down is just one of the most effective things that it does. I think particularly the scene when Rocket's three friends die was just immaculately disturbing, and the way that he kind of runs away, that was all so in character. And considering that Rocket doesn't do much in the first two acts of the movie, like in the present day, his presence is kind of elevated so much. And there's the scene where the Guardians get a hold of his information and they see some recordings of what happened to him, and they're all so disturbed by it. And that kind of goes alongside building up this villain of the High Evolutionary, which I thought all kind of came together really, really effectively to do even more with the character. I think each film has built upon what we know about Rocket, even Infinity War and Endgame. And I know that James Gunn isn't exactly happy with some of the choices made, but you can see in those movies, particularly Endgame, the kind of sadness behind Rocket at losing everyone. He's not really much of a focus, but I feel like each time we've seen Rocket, we've learned more about him, to the point where a lot of people did think he was going to die, and I think the marketing did point in that direction. But in many ways, I'm so happy that he didn't, and I'm happy that he gets to live and have that chance to be happy.
Yeah, and that whole scene with Rocket's friends, it was just so devastating. Because what I thought for the movie, I thought those characters survived. Because I remember James Gunn was talking about, we're going to get introduced to Lila. And I thought, oh, I guess we're going to see Rocket's old friends or something like that. And we did.
That's what I thought too, yeah.
But no, it goes into flashbacks. And I thought they escaped. But no, it's just so devastating. Oh, it's so emotionally hard to watch that bit. But in terms of characterization, it was continuing that arc, with Rocket, and he's trying to make friends, and he doesn't know how to make friends. In the first two volumes, there's a great scene where Rocket finds these baby raccoons, and it's heartwarming, but it's like, this is a chance to, save these baby raccoons. It gives them a better life. That was just very like,
Yeah, I think Rocket has struggled with being a hero and always found it difficult to accept himself as a good person. And I think the end of this movie really goes hard with making it work in that sense. You really do feel like he can come to an acceptance of himself as a hero and as a leader, as a captain at the end. One of the scenes that I loved so much was when they're all saying their goodbyes at the end, and Quill says, "You're a better leader than I could ever be." And he gets up and they all do the Ravager salute to Rocket, and they all stand up and do it, just like in the first movie. And the same music is playing, which was just such a great little detail. This score is from John Murphy, not Tyler Bates. And there were some moments where I was like, that's fantastic, because they're not just disregarding the sound of the other movies, the motifs, the themes. John Murphy has incorporated them. And I love the scene because they all stand up, and instead of Rocket being the last one to stand, still being on a level below them, they're all stood up and are level with him. And in that moment, like, that's just so good. This whole trilogy, I feel like this movie is just so perfectly wrapping up the themes of this trilogy. It's all about acceptance of yourself, acceptance of others, acceptance of grief, acceptance of your mistakes. You think about Quill and Gamora in this movie, it doesn't happen the regular kind of what you might expect of the whole, oh yeah, they get back together and it's all good. No, Quill has to accept the fact that, maybe she is happy with this new life, and maybe things can't go back to the way they were, and maybe that's okay, and maybe the thing to do is not cling on to what you had, but also to move forward. And his choice to leave at the end and go back to Earth is very much the idea of stop running, because when you run, you never truly get to confront it, you never truly let go of what was in the past. And I think all the characters at the end have that chance to say, I'm going to face what it is that I find difficult, and I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to use that to move forward with myself. And that was just, like, I think this movie was great, but particularly the third act, James Gunn was firing on all cylinders, and he was just, like, whether it be direction or writing, the editing and the performances and the music, all of that just kind of came together so spectacularly.
Yeah, I agree on that. It's linking back to everything, which I was so happy with, because, this one, as you were saying, like, it was wrapping up everything in a really sweet way. And one of the great character arcs, you have to face something that, you must come to accept to. And there was one great scene that actually shows that, was when Rocket goes and finds the High Evolutionary, but he finds the baby raccoons, and then he comes to find what species they were, and he reads it's raccoons. And there's a great line. He shoots the High Evolutionary with a great one-liner. He's like, "No, I'm Rocket Raccoon." That was great. He comes to himself. He's learning about himself, and he comes to acceptance about that. And there's a great scene just before that with the Beastie Boys, which was so spectacular. It was so good.
My God, that has to be one of just the best action sequences in any comic book
Yeah.
movie. Already you've got so many amazing scenes from this trilogy, like especially in volume 2, when you've got the come a little bit closer scene and the entire kind of like final act, which I talked about in the video we did on that. But the No Sleep Till Brooklyn scene was so good. The one take
It was
action
incredible.
in this corridor, can you really ever get better than a superhero hallway fight? I don't think so. And, again, James Gunn and his direction took it to the next level. And you're right, the scene where Rocket claims his identity as a raccoon was amazing. It's something that I never really knew that I wanted, but it's so brilliant. As soon as his third scene in the MCU, in the first Guardians movie, Rocket's been saying, I'm not a raccoon, I'm just me. And, it's always been like a joke, but he owns it and it really works. It's one of those amazing things where they take a joke that has been persistent and effective and they reclaim it into an emotional moment. And that, I think, is power of writing, which is undescribable. And I love that all the Guardians come to Rocket's aid in that moment, and they all help him beat the absolute shit out of the High Evolutionary.
Oh my
God. And they peel off his face, like, genuinely just,
that is
like, fantastic.
There's some metal stuff in this
Yeah.
film. It goes metal. Like, one of my favorite set pieces was the entirety of nowhere comes out of the warp space jump thing,
Yeah.
and it comes out of nowhere, and the eye
it comes
is a
out of
cannon.
nowhere. It comes out.
Yeah, there's some metal stuff. Yeah, they peel his face off. Oh my God. Yeah, there's some really intense stuff in this film. But no,
Yeah, and then all the torture stuff as well. Like they really pushed the 12A, the PG-13 rating. Like Quill drops an F-bomb, which is the first one in the entire MCU, and that was just fun. And I really did love like all of that stuff. And on the subject of the High Evolutionary, he was so good.
Oh,
like,
he was so good.
Just
I agree.
like he wasn't sympathetic or understandable like Ego was. He's not quite as one note as Ronan, but so effective and so amazingly evil and hateable, and it was so satisfying to see him. And I tell you what, Chukwudi Iwuji, I hope I'm saying that right. Amazing job. I'd already watched him in Peacemaker and I knew that he was great, but damn, he just brought so much.
No,
yeah, he was. Yeah, so good. James Gunn loves his series regulars, but no, he was just fantastic. What a villain.
Yeah, he had a great performance as being the High Evolutionary, and he was so hateable. He was so evil. Like, the guy was just evil incarnation himself. He was just like torturing these animals and trying to make this better society, which he failed to do. That really intrigues me, the character dynamic between Rocket and the Evolutionary. They have like a similar, not mindset, but they are very smart. But one of them is very jealous about the idea of like being smart, but there's no thought to it at all. He's obsessed with that, and he just destroys the planet. He's like, oh, okay, I don't care for this.
That is some next level shit. Like,
he's
holy
like,
hell.
I don't care. Oh, okay.
He just goes for it. He really is like, I would say he's almost a perfection of what Ronan is. I love Ronan. I think he's got great presence. I love how he's shot, all that stuff. Like, I think he's cool in Guardians 1. But there definitely is something to be said about he isn't just quite enough developed. I feel like the High Evolutionary is the perfection of that, which is ironic because he wants to perfect everything.
Yeah.
But Ego is a very personal villain, whether it come to like his evil deeds of sleeping with all these women and having kids with them all, like, and the personal connections that he makes with all of them, and the personal connection he has with Quill and with Meredith Quill and with Yondu and all that, like, that is all just fantastic. But the High Evolutionary, the lack of personalization he has for everyone, that he will just kill anyone at the drop of a hat. Like, there's a moment where all of the people who've been working for him turn on him and he just kills them all in an instant, and that is so good. You just gotta love a villain who is just evil and really good at being evil. There's always something fun in that.
Yeah. It's not like Mustache Twirly, like, it's not on that level with it, but it's just something that is like, oh wow, he's evil. He's just so evil. But yeah, that is some insane villain storytelling right there. Speaking of villains, we have another villain turned hero, Adam Warlock. This is interesting because you read the Infinity Gauntlet graphic novel, and Adam Warlock was in that.
Yes, I remember when Infinity War came out, I got the big old omnibus of Infinity Gauntlet and I read it. And actually before that I read the Adam Warlock Complete Collection by Jim Starlin. And obviously in the comics it's very different. Adam Warlock, he has the Soul Stone in his head, and obviously there's a lot of delightfully kind of 70s comic book like writing with a "'Tis I, Adam Warlock," that's really fun. But what was interesting about this Adam Warlock is that he's just a baby. Like, he's so kind of matter of fact in the things that he says and does, and he is also so like simple-minded and so easily influenced, and I think that really works well to his arc. The idea that at the end he's like, "Why are you saving me?" And I can't remember who says it. Oh, Groot says,
Groot,
"Oh,
yeah.
everyone deserves a second chance." And in that moment Warlock gets that opportunity. I will say that, this movie probably has the most going on out of all the Guardians movies. It's a very busy movie, and I did feel like at points Warlock wasn't in it as much as he could have been, and also Kraglin and the whole like nowhere stuff. It takes such a backseat that I forgot that it was even involved. So when it kind of cropped up in the movie, I was like, "Oh, that's still here."
Hey, great, yeah.
And I still think that they like used it all well, but there is definitely something to be said about like the movie's got so much going on. I think what we're seeing is the start of something with Adam Warlock. He's definitely going to see him again. I think
We
Will
are definitely
Poulter
gonna see him.
can do some really good stuff. So yeah, who knows? Maybe as the next Guardians or whatever they want to do.
Yeah, I think this is just an introduction to the character as well. But I think the film was just focused on high evolutionary, which it was trying to do. So I can't argue on that. But I thought,
Yeah, they tied a lot of things together with the High Evolutionary. Like they confirmed that he created the Sovereign, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept there. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously they have the Adam Warlock tease at the end of Volume 2. And I think it was a good idea to tie them in so they didn't feel so separate. They could still kind of tie in well enough. As to say, I think that was really cool. I want to talk about the music, the awesome
Oh, yes,
mixtape
the
for
music.
the film,
Yes.
because I made what I think is a mistake. I listened to the soundtrack before the film
How much did you listen? Like, how many times did you listen to the mixtape?
a lot. I know you only listened like once or twice. So it wasn't as
Yeah, I
bad.
listened to once or
But
twice. I'd be like, cool. Because I don't want to be
yeah.
like imagining the stuff with this thing. But there's one song that I was obsessed with, and that's Reasons by Earth, Wind and Fire. That's a banger. That's a banger song that. And I was imagining, this story of like, in the film, Gamora and Peter have an emotional arc together, like to reunite or talking about this different Gamora. And I thought that could work really well to remember what was the relationship between them, talking about their experiences. But no, that is in the prison, well, not the prison arc. Why did I say prison arc? We're
This
not in
isn't
Star Wars.
Andor.
This is not Andor.
One way out.
One way out. No, it didn't remind me with the uniforms. One way out.
No, it did.
But with that, it's in the organic facility thing.
Yes.
Organ. I don't know what's it called.
Yeah,
but
it's like something scope maybe. Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
yeah, that was in the bit where Drax and Mantis trying to defend themselves, and then Groot just comes in with the Bowie and
With Reasons playing.
With Reasons playing, and I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, this is great, but
We were in the cinema together, and I I felt you next to me be like, oh, because you were hoping that would. But honestly, I had projected so many scenarios onto what the music would be.
That is the biggest mistake. That is the biggest mistake.
I know. I'm really upset that I did that looking back. And I definitely think that, all of my criticisms for this movie, I am 90% sure, whether it be like the marketing giving away too much or the pacing or, the structure of it or whether it's the music, I'm so sure that will all go away in a second viewing, which is great because, all of it really is just kind of trivial stuff. I feel like similar to the first movie, there's enough there that makes it not quite a 10 out of 10 for me, but it's not like a whole lot of stuff that really makes me dislike the movie. It's just moments that I'm not too keen on. But yeah, the music, I really like the soundtrack, and there are some songs that I really wish had more play. Like San Francisco is my favorite song on the soundtrack, and I love it to bits. And it plays for like 2 seconds, and I was like, I was like getting really excited. But then again, on the other side of that, you got Creep, which is so well used at the beginning. No Sleep Till Brooklyn, which, as we say, is one of the best action sequences, just so good. And then the ending with Dog Days Are Over is pitch perfect. Everyone just happy and smiling and dancing, and Drax dances with everyone, and everyone's dancing together. It was perfect. It was so amazing. Like, I think so many people, like, I had a conversation with my friend yesterday who was like, I swear to God, if Rocket dies, and I think we all expected it to be a sad and emotional ending, and it was, but for so many different reasons. And using
So
that
many different
song,
reasons.
yeah, it just like, wow, James Gunn. That guy just knows what he's doing. I think this movie confirms to me that his Superman movie, all the ingredients are there, and I think we have no better person to cook it all together than him, because he's done it. He's done it again every
He does
single
it again.
time. He keeps on
The man
hitting,
knows
and
how to cook.
he really does. And I think what they've created here is a perfect trilogy, and not only a perfect trilogy, but the best MCU trilogy by far.
Yes, I agree. It's like the perfect MCU trilogy you have right here. It's got amazing scenes, a banger soundtrack, and the story is just so good. It's just so different to what you're seeing in the entire MCU. It's such a jarring watch, that you're watching all these films in the MCU, and then you get to the Guardians films, you're like, these are really good, and and then you just come back to the reality of the MCU. It's just like very bizarre to watch. But no,
Yeah, the tonal whiplash of watching Quantumania and then Guardians 3 is just insane, because the quality is on such a different level.
Marvel hasn't got anything that would top Guardians of the Galaxy 3 or the trilogy itself, or Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. It's
Yeah.
such an important piece to their work, what James Gunn did. You can see the creativity that puts into even the music. Like, there's a lot that goes into this, and he jump-started this idea of like look into the 80s of like, with music back in 2014. Like it was something that it was really interesting process, like with the 70s music, and then we got progressively to later music, which is a really interesting process, because I remember in Guardians Volume 2, Star-Lord gets a Zune.
Yes.
And then it gets a new music on Zune,
Oh, and he
and
gives it to Rocket at the end. How
oh yeah,
perfect!
that's
And we
so
get
good.
a
Oh
and we
my
get a
god.
scene in one of the flashbacks where the High Evolutionary is talking to Rocket about music, almost like an origin for why Rocket loves music so much. And
Oh no.
honestly, the Dog Days Are Over scene, the more I think about it, might just be one of my favorite scenes in any comic book movie, in any movie, because of
It's
everything that
such
it
a wholesome.
represents
It's
and everything
wholesome.
that's come before. It was just so perfect. And
Yes.
I have an email here from Samuel Masson, as ever. So many,
Hey.
so many emails these last few weeks. Thank you so
Hey.
much.
Thanks, Sam.
Hello there, Tom and John. How far art thou? Very good, thank you. Volume 3 was one of my most anticipated MCU films post Endgame. It had a
Yes.
lot to live up for. Two amazing predecessors, some heart, humor, and tears. Could James Gunn make it a hat trick? Of course he could. So this
Oh.
is by far the best film since Endgame. I'm willing to let my bias for No Way Home slide for this, because it all hit the right notes. This film was emotional and it worked so well. I never cried, but this movie cracked me. Rocket's story had me on edge and worried throughout the film. It could have come across forced, but it was so brilliantly written and acted. But of course, everyone had their chance to shine through the course of the film. Tyler Bates also makes it a trio of awesomeness with his score. Well, John Murphy, but yes. So powerful, emotional, and just so dang good. Of course, we have our awesome mix songs, highlights being Come and Get Your Love, Since You Be Gone, and No Sleep Till Brooklyn. I'm a sucker for older music, and this gave me a true Guardians vibe. For me, one of my favorite parts of the film were the characters and cameos. We already talked about Rocket and the rest of the crew, but Cosmo the space dog was there. Absolute delight to see Cosmo. But we also got to see
Oh.
Howard the Duck complete his cameo hat trick. A lot of hat tricks in this trilogy. And one of my
Oh,
favorite
yes.
actors, Nathan Fillion, came back. And this time we saw
Hey.
his face in all its glory. What a man. Will Poulter had a good debut as Adam Warlock, and I'm interested to see where his character goes.
Oh
James
yeah.
Gunn did such a phenomenal job with this movie and trilogy. This is the best trilogy in the MCU, hands down. Gunn delivered on
Hands
every
down.
aspect of the trilogy, and that was even after being fired by Disney. He didn't have to come back, but he did, and I'm glad he did. If this trilogy is anything to go by, I'm really interested to see what DC's future has to offer. My question to you, gentlemen, is where do you think our characters will turn up next? And what do you want to see from them? Thanks for the pod, gentlemen. Take care, Sam. Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Sam.
Sam.
All
I agree
right.
with all of that.
Oh,
As
yeah,
always,
I
like, I
agree.
think,
Yeah.
Sam, you got some good takes, man. What do you
Goated
think, John?
takes.
What the goat? Where do you think the characters are going to show up again? Do you want to see them
This
again?
is a
Like,
very.
what are your thoughts?
I really don't know. Rocket, I really like the character. I think he's my favorite out of the MCU. Like,
Oh,
literally,
really? Yeah, no, fair
like,
enough.
it was just such a really interesting character. That's my hot take. He's my favorite character out of the MCU. Yeah, I think we should put the characters to rest. Star-Lord is coming back, but it would be really nice to see Rocket back. But then again, it's James Gunn. He knows how to take these directions with these characters. and it's what makes it so unique. Is he has this unique direction with the characters and how how he's going to place them in the story. He doesn't go too long with the funny stuff. He hits the emotional beats, which he does. Come on, like if you see that in the trilogy, you get to see the emotional beats, like from the first film, like with Peter uniting the Guardians and seeing his mother, like holding his hand, and that's like the start of acceptance. And then in the second one, you've got Yondu self-sacrificing, and then this one, you've got everyone saying goodbye to each other. It's a really wholesome way. And then Groot talks. Yeah,
I think you mean Vin
that's
Diesel talked. It was in that
yeah,
moment that it went from being Groot to Vin Diesel. He was like, "I love you guys," and I was like, "He's gonna
I
call
love
them
you
a
guys.
family. He's gonna call them a family."
Yeah, but for me personally, I should put these characters to rest. They've done such an amazing work on the characters, so I think we should put them to rest. What about you?
I agree. Without James Gunn, I just don't know how it would work.
Yeah.
He understands these characters like no other, and I think you can see that when it comes to Infinity War and Endgame. I do think they do get the Guardians right in some respects, but in other respects, I think they really fumble. They don't do anything with Drax and Mantis, characters that I think James Gunn really goes deep into. They have Quill return to Earth and not really react to it. I'm not saying that nobody else can do it, but it's a difficult thing. I think he's proved 4 times now. I think even the holiday special, which we did a video on, and is just delightful. Even that in its 40 minutes, 50 minutes, just shows how well he understands these characters. And I really do think that without that, like I know at the end it said that the legendary Star-Lord will return. Who knows how that's going to be, but I agree with you. The galaxy's so big. I don't mind the Guardians of the Galaxy being off and not crossing over with the Avengers and stuff, because the galaxy honestly can be as vast as they want it to be. They can be off wherever. Drax and Nebula, they're making their community in nowhere. That's great. Again, that feels like their story's wrapped up. Mantis is finding herself. Peter's come back to Earth, for a simple life. I just think that all of it is so perfectly wrapped up. I just don't think that there's really any point of seeing them all again. Maybe Adam Warlock, sure, but even then, I just think that how can you do these characters without James Gunn? I just don't know. I really don't. But I think that the film just, in so many respects, like there's so much to talk about, and there's so much that I think still we've only scratched the surface. But it really is one that's only gonna get better with time. Do you know what I mean? I think it's just absolutely incredible. What are you gonna give Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 out of 10?
Again, this is like such a perfect trilogy to have in the MCU. I'm really optimistic. I would give it a 9 or a 10. That's why I meant like 9 or 10. That's why I'm really out, because I just thoroughly enjoyed this. Yeah,
I'm going 9. It really was. Like the more I think about it, the better it gets. We were walking back and I was thinking, oh, I don't think I liked it quite as much as the first film. And now I'm thinking, oh, maybe I liked it more than the first film. And yeah, it really was. Again, the more I rewatch it, I'm sure the better it will get. Thank you everybody for listening. If you're listening on YouTube and you liked it, you can give us a like and subscribe if you want to see more. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can follow and give us a 5-star review if you think we're worthy. Next week, we're doing Star Wars Visions Volume 2, which is going to be really, really interesting. I've watched about half of them already, and my God, just so cool. Such an interesting spin on Star Wars. That's going to be great to come back to after Volume 1 or way back when. And you can send us an email at outstandingfilmpod@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on Star Wars Visions Volume 2 and ask us any questions. We'll answer it right here on the podcast next week. And you can follow us on Instagram at outstandingfilmpod to see our incredible thumbnails from Zain Afzal, and on Twitter for more thoughts from me. Thanks to Jones-Meyer for the excellent theme and Ronan Phillips for vocals as always. And I think that is everything.
That is everything. Thank you, Sam, for the email. It's
yes,
a pleasure.
fantastic.
It's a pleasure reading the emails. If anyone else wants to send emails, do just ask us questions about any film in general. So, thank you for listening. Take what you're given.
You're nothing back.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.